What is up, guys? It is the Bluebloods here, man, with another episode of the 2 Minute Drill, Tuesday, May 11th. Man, again, I apologize for our Monday episode being out so late. YouTube let me down, but this episode on time, like usual, and we're headed back to the swag to talk a big storyline. So I'm not sure how many people are really covering this storyline, but I think it's going to be an important one to cover, and I really wanted to see. So we have a lot of people who follow our SWAT coverage. I want to see what y'all's thoughts are about this. I want y'all to really be interactive with this video, get it out there so we can get a lot of opinions and we can kind of address this as a Blue Bloods community. But let's get right into it, man. The FCS All-American list was released yesterday, May 10th. It honors some of the best FCS athletes from all around the country. Over 45 schools were represented by over 80 athletes. North Dakota State led all schools with 6 selections, while Jacksonville State, Delaware, James Madison, Sam Houston, South Dakota State all had 4 selections and came in second. But for me, that's all great and stuff. But for me, there was one player that was missing that I thought should have probably been on the list. I mean, if you want to put him first team, that's fine. Second team, that's fine. And based on his Twitter reaction when this was released, he believed he should have been a selection as well. This player was the SWAC Player of the Year. He is a finalist for the Walter Payton Award. He's and also the QB of the SWAC championship team, the Alabama A&M Bulldogs. Aqeel Glass somehow did not make the cut for first or second team All-American. And I mean, this is a quarterback that threw for over 1,300 yards, had 16 touchdowns, only 3 turnovers. He was averaging over 300 yards per game this season through the air, and somehow didn't find his name on this list. And so, when I look at that, I'm like, okay, so what was he missing? So what we're going to do is kind of talk about why I thought he should be on there in the first place, but then kind of go back, see who made it, what they did this season, and kind of compare and see, okay, so should he have been on the list? I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I'm thinking he probably should have, to say the least. But let's get right into it, man. I mean, Glass was the best quarterback in the SWAC this season. He had his key performance. Okay, I say key, kind of like I do when you say, like, where is his Heisman performance when you look at like a Power 5 player, so like Cam Newton's Heisman performance, that LSU game, that Alabama comeback were his 2 big moments. You look at Joe Burrow, that Alabama game really set him apart. That Texas game also on the road and only his second start was a big Heisman moment. You look at Devontae Smith this year, those last few weeks of the season, he just put on a show. And then the SEC championship was kind of like his final stage. Glass, though, his key performance came against Jackson State on the biggest stage, man. This game was televised, primetime ESPN. Glass goes out there, throws 6 touchdowns, rushes for another. So he gets 7 total touchdowns on the day. He threw for over 440 yards against one of the better secondaries in the conference. Because say what you want about that Jackson State defense, they had dogs in that secondary. So therefore, I'm giving him a lot of credit for that, to say the least. And he's one of the 5 quarterbacks to be a finalist for the Walter Payton Award. That he was, 3 of the 4 quarterbacks who made it above him on the All-American team, guys, also made the first or second team All-American list. So there was someone who made the list above him that didn't even make it on the Walter Payton Award list, which doesn't make much sense to me. Glass and Tim Demrot out of Fordham both missed the list, both missed the All-American team, but were on the list of Walter Payton Award winners. Award finalists. And, my key here is now to look who made the list over Glass. This included Eric Barrar from Eastern Washington, Cole Kelly from Southeastern Louisiana. Those were the 2 first-team quarterbacks. Barrar had 2.4 thousand rushing, 2,400 passing yards this year, 19 passing touchdowns, 7 picks. He led his team to the FCS playoffs. They ran into North Dakota State, but he played 7 games and put up these stats. Kelly, on the other hand, also played 7 games. He had 2,600 yards passing, 18 passing touchdowns, 4 picks, and he averaged over 300 yards per game. But he also threw 4 touchdowns in 5 of his 7 games. So both of these guys are very qualified to be on the All-American list. And so I'm not taking anything away from them. So you can move them around first team, second team, whatever you want to do. But both of these guys played absolutely out of their mind. So I'm not taking anything away from these guys, but it goes to show you that Glass was putting up similar stats in less games. Glass only played in 4 games this year, guys, and he had 16 passing touchdowns. These two guys who played 7 games only threw for 18 and 19. So it shows you what kind of pace Glass was on in terms of his performance. And you look at the second team, and this is where it kind of gets me in terms of how did he not make it. You had Eric Schmid out of Sam Houston State and Leon Welch out of Samford were both picked above Glass. You look at Welch, 6 games total, 2,200 yards passing, 12 passing touchdowns, and only 5 interceptions. But he did have 4 rushing touchdowns. So this is where I want to get. So in 6 games, he only threw about 1,000 more yards than Glass, and with his average, Glass would have been right there in terms of passing yards. He had less passing touchdowns, more turnovers. He did have more rushing touchdowns, but Glass really isn't a dynamic playmaker with his legs. You don't expect him to run for a lot of touchdowns. How was Glass not comparable to him? You could say, okay, well, what kind of talent did they play against? I thought this was one of the most talented years for the SWAC they've had in a while. And I really think this is where I would say, okay, Glass deserved to be on this list. Schmidt, on the other hand, 2,500 passing yards, 17 passing touchdowns, 9 picks, but he's real dynamic with his legs, guys. 8 rushing touchdowns. That was in 9 games. And I think you see how dynamic Glass really is through the air. This guy played 9 games, only had 1 more passing touchdown than Glass, had multiple more turnovers, and I think he probably wouldn't have held up if Glass got to play 9 games, because Glass probably would have thrown for over 2,500 yards if I had to guess. And so I'm looking at this, and I want y'all to let me know, do you think Glass should have been a first-team guy, or do you think he should have replaced one of these second-team guys? I think I would have been okay with him replacing either second-team guy. And I think he deserved to. When you have the SWAC play, there's no reason the SWAC Player of the Year as a quarterback who leads his team to a conference championship and all that. I don't think that person should not be an All-American. That it kind of blows my mind, if we're going to be completely honest, that he didn't even get a nod as a second team guy. I'm sure if we had a third team, like some places do, he probably is going to be on it. But I really think after his performance this year, he should have been a first or second team guy, definitely a second team guy, in my opinion. Now, for me, I look at Glass. I think he had one of the toughest roads this year to go down. He had all these cancellations. I believe Alabama A&M had like a 30-something day layoff in the middle of the season. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I'm pretty sure it was like 35-ish days or something like that. They had the postponement of the season. They had all the hypes running these other programs. Southern was on the upswing with their great team. Jackson State took over everything. They were the new darlings of the SWAC. Arkansas Pine Bluff out there absolutely had a great season. I'm looking at all this and I'm like, okay, so no one was really talking about Alabama A&M at times, and he had to go through all of this and carry a program that hasn't reached the heights that they've reached this year in almost 10 years. This was their first SWAC championship since 2011, guys. I mean, that shows you what Glass had to do. Now, he has equal stats to the top quarterbacks in terms of per game averages, because it's so hard to compare across the FCS because so many teams played so many different so many I guess different amounts of games. He showed up on the biggest stage as well. That's another key factor. Imagine if Glass had 7 to 9 games to put on the show that he was putting on every time he stepped on the field, guys. That's where I'm kind of trying to go here is what happens if he just has a chance? I think the competition level in the SWAC is a horrible argument if that's the route you're going to go. I thought the competition level was one of the best among FCS. I thought Glass delivered week in and week out all season, and he deserved one of the top 4 spots. But in terms of that, let me know what y'all think in the comments about whether Glass should have been an FCS All-American, and what are y'all's thoughts on a lot of great players being snubbed from the SWAC, particularly in terms of not really getting much respect. I even thought Dalen Hayes could have potentially made a run at a spot too. He ended up not, but I thought he could have been a player that I saw making a real run. And I want to kind of end this off briefly. I just want to kind of lay out this topic because I have a big plan, a big episode plan where I'm going to cover this and kind of do like a way too early preview thing and talk about this topic particularly. And I'm even reaching out to some guests to have them come on with me. And it's why do HBCU athletes consistently get overlooked? We're going to address it again. We talked about it in terms of the NFL draft. I believe it was last week, but let's talk about it now. Just in terms of FCS football, I don't think they get enough respect. I mean, let me know what y'all think of the comments about that. I mean, when you think of SWAC football, you think of HBCU football, do you think they get the shine that, some of these other programs get? I get it. There's not a North Dakota State, and I understand that. They've won a lot of national titles. They're very, very accomplished. But I feel like they deserve a little bit more respect in the rankings in terms of just overall perception, I guess television, everything. Like I feel like there's so much progress that needs to be made all across the board in terms of how we view HBC football and view particularly the SWAC, which I think is going to be so dynamic, so competitive, and so ridiculous next year, especially with the addition of some new teams, which we're going to cover probably later this week. But I don't really want to get too far into this topic. I just want to kind of leave y'all with like just a small nugget to get y'all thinking, kind of see what y'all feel in the comments. I mean, do you think SWAC football, HBC football gets enough shine? And what would y'all like to see more covered? How do y'all think it's going to go about gaining more respect in terms of national prominence at the FCS level? So leave a comment down below if you have an opinion on that. We'll probably share some of them, and probably later this week, guys, I would say probably Thursday or Friday, we'll have an announcement about a big show that I've been planning to cover this exact topic and some other huge storylines surrounding the SWAC and HBCU football. So make sure to subscribe below, man. Give this video a thumbs up. It's a wrap on this episode, man, but we'll be back next week. I got big announcements. Merch is going out to all of y'all winners this week, so I cannot wait for y'all to get that. Appreciate y'all support, man. Make sure to subscribe, enter yourself in that 200 subscriber giveaway, and the quicker we get to 500, the quicker I can make the gigantic announcement of what we're going to do for our road to 1,000 subscribers, because we are going to give away something that I don't think any other YouTube channel on any platform has ever given out. So make sure to subscribe now, enter yourself into that. We appreciate all y'all support, guys. But for myself, the 2 Minute Drill, and the Blue Bloods, we are out.